Welcome to the Empower L podcast. I'm your host, Vero, and I'm so excited to have you join me on this journey of empowerment and growth. This podcast is designed for ambitious, high-achieving women who are ready to break free from overwhelm and step into their power. Together, we'll explore practical strategies, share inspiring stories, and hear from experts who can help you navigate the challenges of balancing ambition and well-being. Whether you're looking to cultivate confidence, transform your mindset, enhance your leadership skills, or find harmony in your life, this is the place for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Empower L podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Today's conversation is one that I think so many women are going to relate to, because life has a funny way of forcing us to reinvent ourselves. Sometimes it's a career change, sometimes it's divorce, motherhood, burnout, loss, and suddenly the version of ourselves that we've known for years doesn't fit anymore. So my guest today is Sass Schaeffer. She's an identity coach who helps women rebuild after major life changes and create a life that actually feels like theirs again. Her background is incredibly diverse, from psychology and nutrition to personal training and business, and we'll get into all of that. And she's lived through some pretty incredible experiences herself, including corporate layoffs, becoming a Golden Gloves boxing champion, and even being impacted by flooding in her home twice. So today we're talking about identity, confidence, intuition, and why maybe the goal isn't actually becoming the person you used to be. So Sass, welcome to the Empower L podcast. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. For people that are meeting you for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to the work that you're doing today?
Sure. So I had led a very predictable life. I got a degree, I got a good job, and I just climbed the corporate ladder. And I didn't really think much ahead of the next step. And somehow that was like 15 years of just staying in corporate healthcare and helping people and growing my profession and getting really good at what I was doing. And yet, at some point in my early 40s, I realized I had checked all the boxes. Like, okay, had a career, I got a degree, I'd gotten married, I had a kiddo, I bought a house. Like, I did all the things I was supposed to do. And I still wasn't happy or fulfilled. Like, it just didn't feel like it was enough. And I don't know if I would have changed things on my own, but the universe has a way of shaking our snow globe for us. And so 2 years in a row, I had gotten laid off from the same field I'd been in for 15 years. And 2 years in a row, my house flooded. And here in Florida, that can be pretty traumatic. The second time around, we ended up losing the house and most of our belongings. And that really was the pressure test on what do I really want for myself, and how can I honor the parts of me that are asking for more and still use all the skills that I have learned over a lifetime in corporate. And from those two positions, I started coaching women, especially late 30s, 40s, 50s, who are going through a similar transitional period and finding out how to tap back into their inner voice, get healthy, and then make a bold move for a new future. And it's just been really rewarding work that I'm so thankful I get to do.
I can relate to some parts of your story so much. Like, it's very similar for me, where I just, like you said, got the degree, got in corporate, climbed the corporate ladder, not really putting much thought into it, always just taking the next step until something happens where you're like, oh my goodness, I'm not where I'm supposed to be, right? And then it's kind of, how do you make that change, or how do you go from there? So I think the work you do is incredible. And one thing that really stood out to me, that you say women shouldn't focus on getting back to themselves. And I think that's really interesting because I think that's something we hear all the time, right? I'm just trying to get back to myself. So, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a direct parallel, right? We always teach the things that we need to learn. And so, you
Absolutely.
know, right? Like then I lived that the first time I got laid off from corporate and my house flooded. And Vero, I went right back to the same field. I didn't even consider doing anything different. I was like, okay, get a new job. And then when the home flooded, right, I lost couches and rugs and all that kind of stuff. I literally went out and bought the exact same stuff. Like it was almost like it never happened. I felt this like compulsion to just be like, no, just make it all better,
Yeah.
act like it never happened and just keep going.
Because that's the easy choice.
It is, right? And it's comfortable. And I think,
Yeah.
so often we feel like, oh, if I feel this discomfort and we do anything, right? Our minds are just meant to keep us from that discomfort, right? To keep ourselves safe. And so it feels very scary to think, okay, everything's changed. What could I build instead? The safest route is like, whoop, just act like it never happened and go back. And that's how we
Mhm.
end up repeating these patterns, right? The guy is different, but the relationship issues are the same. Or it's a different job or a new city, but I still feel that same ick at night, or I'm still not satisfied. And so I really try to help people, women especially, when they're in these positions where there is this big opening in their life, whether it's from loss or divorce or a health change or a natural disaster, what have you, right? To look at that as a new opening. And because for women especially, I think so many of us, we build over decades a life that is comfortable for everybody else, right? We build
Yeah.
it for our spouses and our families and the safety of corporate or the safety of what we do. And at some point, there's that question of, is this really my dream? Is this really what I want to do? Or am I just doing what I think I should do or what everybody thinks I should do? And
Yeah.
so it's scary, but it's really empowering to open up that door to doing something different this time around.
Yeah. So, what do you then encourage women to do? Because I think it's our natural instinct to, like we said, try to go back to how things were. And I know that that is not what you teach and what you talk about. So, how do you help women try to find a different route?
Yeah, so right, I break it down to three phases. So I find that most women, and myself included, right, we often live in survival mode without even knowing it.
Yeah.
Right. This can happen when, if you notice that at night you're tired, but you're wired, right? You're scrolling, you're drinking, you're swiping, you're shopping, you're just doing anything to kind of soothe yourself. This also can happen if you don't have any dreams. Like I didn't really have any like big goals. My goal was like make it through another year, get the
Yeah.
next promotion. I don't know, make a couple more dollars at work. Like I didn't have any real direction. And so the first step is really realizing that you're in this survival mode. If all you're worried, if your mental chatter is, did I get the chicken? When's the next practice? What am I doing? Unload laundry, right? Like we all get that, but that means you're in this kind of like hamster wheel of survival. So using my nutrition and my fitness degree, the first step is really just calming down the nervous system because when we are so amped up and we're living on that stress, we can't think creatively, right? The thinking part, our amygdala is turned off. And so it's impossible to think differently or do differently. So the very first step is just slowing all of that down, finding a way to be at peace with yourself. This often looks like structured downtime, right? For women who do it all and are always functioning, right? How can we relax the nervous system and build a healthy foundation so that you can actually move to the next step? This also is a lot of women like we skip meals, you wake up, you have
Yeah.
caffeine, you just start going, it's 3 o'clock, and you're like, oh my God, I haven't eaten all day, right? I still do that sometimes. And so some of those just cues, we got to start with like building the physical foundation first. It's so important.
Yeah, I once again can really relate to your answer. It's the same for me. Like, once I started getting this wave of anxiety and of realizing that I wasn't in the right place and that I had to do something different, like you said, I didn't have any goals or dreams because it was always just, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step? And I really had to get back to a place of safety and get out of that survival mode before I could start dreaming and start seeing what the next thing might be. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that you see that a lot.
Yeah. Yes. And safety, it seems like kind of like weird, like safety. Well, I'm not, right?
Yeah,
Like I'm safe. But there's like
absolutely.
an emotional safety though that
Yeah.
sometimes that we miss, and you can't really put your finger on it until somebody says it and you're like, "Oh, I actually am kind of
Mhm.
always spinning," or I don't feel like I'm entitled to relax, or so
Yeah.
those are some of the big keys. So thanks for bringing that up. Those are great points.
Yeah. I think, like I said, a lot of women are in that phase and probably don't even realize it. I think we stay there a long time before we realize it, which is
Hmm.
sad. But
Hmm.
uh, many women build their identity around, like we said, being the perfect employee or wife or mom or caregiver or the person everyone depends on, or all of these hats that we're wearing. So, what happens when one of those roles suddenly disappear?
Yeah, and right, it can really be very destabilizing. I think a lot of us as women, whether we were given these messages explicitly in relationship or in family, or we just kind of soak them up as women together in the culture, right? There's this idea of like my usefulness is useful to others, right? Like I'm productive, I'm a good mom, I show up at work, I go the extra mile, I do all of these things, and we tie up our own self-worth with that. So then when we lose that, we're like, well then who am I? And am I good enough just being me? Right? Like I definitely felt that in corporate, right? I was the go-to person in my field and I knew all these things. And then, I got laid off twice and I was like, well, if I'm not that like, superstar or whatever, like if I'm not good at that, then like what am I good at? And what's my purpose? And am I enough just being me, right? Do people like me just for me? And I think that's very normal. And it's a beautiful thing that women typically, right, we're kind of raised and socialized, and maybe it's part nature too, to be very caring and compassionate, empathetic, and right, nurturing in all sorts of ways at work and our friendships. But when we always put all that focus on everybody else and what we do for everybody else, and we don't put any of it on ourselves, when those roles shift, we realize that our own store is empty, right? We don't have anything just for us. And so some of the process then is reconnecting and building what do you have just for you, right? What do you enjoy? What makes you feel fulfilled? What do you want? And those are questions a lot of women really don't ask themselves until something changes.
Yeah, I went through that as well. Like I said, once I kind of got out of that survival mode and was starting to think about what I actually wanted to do, one of the first things I had to do was to accept me as just me. Like, was I okay with me not being the person that did everyone expected of her? And was I okay not being Vero the CPA and just being Vero and not throwing all of that away? Like, obviously, there's skills that we build that we use throughout our lives, but not having those letters or that title, like, I had to accept that I was okay with that before moving forward. And it's easier said than done.
Yeah, so true. And I think, I would just, right, great points that I can feel the resonance there. I would just say, right, like for me, it wasn't like a one-time decision. Like, okay, great. I made the
No.
decision. I feel good today. I'm done. You're like, oh, and then next week it pops up. And then two
Yeah.
months from now, when somebody says, what do you do? And I fumble through being an entrepreneur or being a coach,
Yes.
right? Then I have those moments. And so I would just, right, like set the expectation. This is not a one-time decision, a one-time like, oh, I'm okay. You're gonna have to just keep coming back to it until it becomes like muscle memory.
That is so true. I'm actually going through a part of that right now, to be completely honest. So,
Yeah.
I still work at my corporate job 3 days a week. I work on my business 2 days a week. And anytime someone asks me, like, what I do, I am just recently starting to not start with, I'm an accountant, because that's the easy answer that everyone understands. But that's not my goal. That's not who I am, and that's not who I want to be, and that's not who I'm becoming. And I find it difficult to start with, I'm a business owner, or I am an entrepreneur, or I'm a coach, or it's so hard to let go of those titles, because I think they're not a title, they're an identity, right?
Sure. Sure, and some of that, right, is a good point that, are we saying that because we're trying to make it easy, right? Like I say that, say, right, and every time we choose that, we make it stronger. But when we
Yep.
slip back into our old titles, is that so that we're not judged? Oh, you're a coach, or right, people think this, that, or the other, or right,
Mhm.
like it makes it, I'm more palatable. It makes it easier to put me in a
Yeah.
box by saying, oh, you're an accountant, oh, you're in healthcare. And so much of that we do
Yeah.
subconsciously, even to kind of manage how people view us. And so I
Yeah.
love it. I love that you started leading with, with where you want to be, right? Your vision for yourself. I love that.
Yeah. It's still uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely more and more starting with that, unless I don't feel like talking to the person. Then
Yeah, there you go.
we
Just
move
shut
on.
it down. I'm an accountant. Shut it down. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no more questions after that, so it's
I believe it. That's great.
I think a lot of ambitious women that are listening to us today have achieved everything like we both did, right? Everything that they thought they were supposed to achieve. The career, the
Mhm.
promotion, the house, the responsibilities, everything that we said, and realize that something still feels off. Like we both had that realization. So, how do you, maybe for you or the women that you help, how do you see that people realize that they're living someone else's vision of success instead of their own?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's right. It's kind of a sneaky feeling because it's almost like a headache or a stomach ache. You could always kind of attribute it to something else. And so
Yeah.
the common things I hear with myself and with other women is like, oh, I'm just tired, right? Like that tired. If you have like, right? Because we can be tired from having a full life and being busy and doing things we love. And we can also feel tired because we feel like in our soul we're unfulfilled. And
Yeah.
so it's more like a blase, like a flattening or a blunting of our emotional experience. So I think, right, if you're saying things like, oh, I'm just tired, or, well, it'll get better when, that's a big one. It'll get better
Yes.
when the kids move out, or when I get the next job, or when my mom's feeling better, or when we move, or if you're always delaying feeling good, that is also a sign that you have built yourself into a system or a cage or a corner that you want to get out of. And then a lot of the justifications and rationalizations. Well, I've been at this job for so long. Well, we've been married for so long, right? We take these things that are sunk costs. You can't go back, right? I spent 15 years in corporate healthcare, right? I learned a lot. Hopefully, I helped a lot of people, but you can't go back. And so don't, right? The saying, don't throw good money after bad, right? You've already spent
Yeah.
15 years or time doing something that wasn't a match, right? Cut your losses at some point and be able to move on. But we feel that like that commitment to our past choices. But we have to accept that as we evolve, it might have been the right choice then, right? It doesn't mean that it was a wrong choice. It's just as part of the journey. And to accept now that you were different and you have different needs, different hopes, different visions, I think that's really, it's actually kind of radical. But I think if you hear all that discontent, that low grade, anxious about small stuff, always feeling tired, putting off feeling good, those are all signs that you're maybe in a spot that, it's time to move on.
And when you see those signs with the women that you help with, like what's the first step that you guide them through?
Yeah, so one thing we do is we often start with kind of the story because all of us have a story in our minds of our past and we project that out into the future. And so common stories I hear are, right, from women who have had failed relationships or relationships didn't work out, like I have a bad picker, I always pick the wrong guys, or I'm unlucky in love, right? Like, oh, I'm good at work, but my private life, ugh, right? And we have these stories and we make meaning. And I really find that the anxious brain isn't really good at collecting evidence. It's good at telling stories. So the first thing I often have women do is like, tell me what your story is. And then acknowledging it and kind of poking the holes in it, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
the stories we tell ourselves, and I did too, are from the victim standpoint. These things happened to me, right?
Yeah.
I got laid off. I tried the house, the relationship, the health. Oh my God, these things happened to me. And that really takes away our agency to choose. And that is what makes us feel so hopeless. So we start
Hmm.
with the story, kind of peel it back, poke some holes, offer evidence against it, and then really try to anchor ourselves to a vision of the future. It's much easier to move forward toward a vision for your future than it is to run from the past, because you're still giving that past energy, that story energy, even if it's that you don't like that story.
That's so powerful. Um, Confidence is a huge topic on this podcast, and I know it is for you as well. So, do you believe that confidence comes after you've rebuilt your identity, or does rebuilding happen because you choose confidence first?
Yeah, that's like the like chicken and the egg, isn't it? Right? Which one comes first? And I
We're
think, right,
passionate
we
about it.
right. It's kind of that interplay. But I found that, right, the confidence in myself and in the women that I work with, it comes from just being okay with themselves without having to compare or not measure up to standards or fear criticism. And so it can be really empowering when you're making these changes to embolden yourself to have that confidence. But we can start building confidence. It's kind of like fitness, right? We can start with lower reps, right?
Yeah.
What do you want for dinner? Where do you want to go? What are you wearing? What do you think? Sharing your opinion, right? Just these little reps, like you were saying, introducing yourself, right? Just little reps of confidence that you're like, oh, okay. I said I was an entrepreneur and like nobody spit in my face or told me I was a loser or right, whatever I imagined would happen. Like, okay, well, maybe I can do that again. And so I think really as we build these small muscle memories with confidence, we can feel strong enough then to make the bigger moves that the big
Yes.
build requires, right? Then we can talk about, I've always wanted to take this solo trip. I've always wanted to go back to school. I've always wanted to start a business, start a podcast. But it really helps to get some of those small reps of confidence first.
I love that. I often say that confidence comes after action. Like we hear from so many people that they're waiting for this magical confidence before they begin something, but it's really after you've taken the action and like you said that you've seen the result of that action that the confidence builds. So I often say that we have to start with courage and not with confidence, but I love
Yeah.
what you're saying to start with those small actions because even if you know that you have to start before you're confident, it's really scary. So I love the starting with the small things that aren't so scary, and that don't have such a big impact. That really helps you to build your confidence.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know you also talk a lot about intuition, and I know that so many women become so used to doing what's expected that they don't even know what their intuition sounds like anymore. And that was me until my 30s. So tell me how you see people reconnect with their intuition.
Yeah, kind of like confidence, we give it away in these small ways, but if you do
Yeah.
it long enough, it really becomes a pattern. And so when I think about intuition, I think about like a radio frequency, right? Where, it can be like a little staticky and maybe it's a little bit quiet, but your intuition is always there. And if I had one lesson for myself that I continue to learn again and again, it's that every time I've ignored my intuition, it has bitten me on the butt. Every time I'm like, I don't really like this person's energy, or I don't think this is for me. Like every single time I have gone against that and I have talked myself into, well, this makes logical sense. Well, Sarah, you're just being too, I talk to myself my full name. Well, Sarah, you're being emotional, right? Or you're not listening, or it'll be fine, right? And so what happens is when we spend time, even years, right, in a relationship, at work, with our children, always kind of tuning out our own intuition, it's the static is there, right? It just gets a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
And then that's when I see women who are always polling. Do you have like that friend who's like, what should I wear? What should I do? What do you
Yes,
think he meant
yes.
by this text, right? We're always getting information from other people because we don't trust ourselves anymore. And it's not that we have bad intuition. It's just that we've turned a deaf ear to it for so
Yeah.
long that we think it's not there. But if we tune back in, again, starting in those little ways of honoring, what do I feel is best for me? And that can be how we dress, how we show up, what we eat, how we talk, all of those little things, right? Going out with someone, not going out with someone, honoring the intuition in those little ways, you'll find that it's like a trainable skill that you can, oh, okay, like I know what's right for me. And I trust myself to follow through with it. because
Yeah.
I think the hardest part that I see in clients and I've seen in myself is when we know the truth. Like, you know the truth, you know that job isn't good for you, you know that he's not good for you, you know that, this, that, or the other, and you still choose to go against it, and you break that trust with yourself when you're not listening to your own intuition.
I love that you say that it's always there. Because I know for myself, and I'm sure for a ton of women that you work with, we think that we don't have intuition, that we don't have that little voice anymore, that it's just gone. But it's like you said, we've suppressed it for so long that we don't hear it or we don't know to listen to it anymore. But it's if you quiet down, it's always there. It always was there, right?
Yes, that's it. And right, we keep ourselves, sometimes the intuition is loud, and that's why we keep ourselves so busy, right? We know this relationship has run its course, or this job or whatever. And if we sit quiet, we know we're going to hear that voice.
Yes.
And so we just stay busy. You go from work to practice to this to that to this. You can never sit down and You do all those things is to avoid that little voice of intuition, because then you'd have to reckon with it.
Yeah, yeah, so true.
So
I
true.
want to switch gears a little bit. So you have such an interesting background from psychology to nutrition to personal training to business. Tell me a little bit about how all of those pieces come together in the work that you do now.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey. I think Steve Jobs once said that, like, when you're in it, you can't connect the dots, but you can always look
Yes.
back and connect the dots. And so, right, in the moment, you're like, it seems like changing gears, but ultimately it all makes sense together. I started in psychology thinking I wanted to be a therapist, right? Always this want to help people, and always a strong belief that people change people, relationships change people, right? You can read a book, it can help, but right, not to the same degree as working with someone, a friend, a loved one. And so I started in psychology, and then realized that it wasn't for me. I wasn't able to kind of separate myself, and my own mental health suffered. And I went into nutrition, similar idea, helping people, again, get healthy, take charge of themselves. And then, as it happens in the corporate world, I showed some promise for leadership, and I got pulled out of nutrition and into business, which was very rewarding and a great career. And then, in the past few years, I've kind of come back to my roots, which are really the one-on-one personal training, nutrition, coaching, going back to kind of where I started, which is, one at a time together is the best way to really affect change. And it's been, now I can kind of bring all of those
Yeah.
pieces into the women that I serve.
Yeah, and all of the skills that we learn along the way, they're all useful, right?
Yeah.
I also have to ask,
Okay.
Golden Gloves boxing champion.
Yeah.
How has boxing shaped the way that you think about resilience and confidence? And just tell me about the boxing experience.
Yeah, so I started fighting on my 24th birthday. I walked into Larry Holmes' gym. I was in Pennsylvania at the time, and he was a former heavyweight champion of the world. And he had a boxing gym, and at 24, I was like, I always loved boxing. I read books about it, I watched it, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it, right? One of those times where, my mind, my body has to cash a check that my mind wrote. Like, well, let's go boxing. Like, okay, I guess we'll do this. And I started it, and I was the only there, and then I boxed again at 30, and I was the only woman in training there for competitive fighting, and right, a male dominated and
Yeah.
an aggressive atmosphere. I'll leave it at that. And the funny thing was, really, boxing is where I got my first taste of positivity, which is a big part of everything that I do. But it was because when your boxers are like delusionally optimistic, right? And so in boxing, you never say you lost, you say you didn't get the win.
Okay.
You're always kind of pumping yourself up, because what I saw and what I realized early on was that if you lost your spirit, if you threw the towel in, if you gave up hope, you walked into the ring in that state, you would absolutely get demolished. Like, there's no way that you can do something as physically tough and mentally tough, right? Like, it's a different thing if someone bumps into you at a bar and you get in a fight, or they
Yes.
said something to you, but you were just like stone cold sober, ding ding, walk across this ring and go punch this woman in the face, and she's going to punch you, right? And so you have to really have a strong control over your mind. And that really centers on, right? I can always get back up. I'm always in training. Right? Showing up and doing the hard thing is enough, right? Like that, I am in the arena doing this, and that counts. Like that counts, whether I win or I don't win. I'm showing up and doing it. And that was really my first taste of, positivity and resilience, surprisingly, from some kind of rough characters at a rough training ground. But, it really stuck with me.
That makes so much sense though, because I think that applies to everything else. Like if you're disconnected or you don't think you're going to win or that you can achieve the thing or whatever it is, then it's not going to happen. Like our mind is so powerful, but in everyday life what's going to happen is just that you won't get the promotion. But in boxing, if you don't have that tough mental attitude, like you said, there's consequences are going to be a little
Yes.
worse.
Immediate and painful consequences. So that
Yeah.
is one way to quickly learn a lesson, is if the
Yeah.
feedback is a punch in the face, you quickly learn it. But yeah, it was really powerful. And that's right. And that's the parallel to everyone, right? Not everyone has to step in the ring to get that example,
Yeah.
but that idea of life is like that, right? It's one thing after another. You think, gosh, how much more can I take? I can't keep doing this. This is so hard. And despite those feelings, right? Acknowledge those feelings. It is so hard and it is so tough. And also, you got to just keep showing up for yourself. You have to keep believing in yourself, because that is really the only way to stick with something that can be as challenging as boxing or as just our everyday life.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Switching gears again a little bit. I had to touch on that because I found it so interesting.
Sure.
You've experienced some really difficult moments in your life, including the flooding twice and the layoffs and many other things. So, looking back now, what did those experiences teach you about rebuilding?
Yeah. So I think the experiences taught me about rebuilding, really the one main thing is that you always have choices, right? You always have the power to choose something different. So many of us, we build this like body of work, this viewpoint of ourselves, right? When I was in corporate, I went by my full name, right? I had all, I looked different, right? We build this like this statue, this version of ourselves that we think, okay, this is what everybody likes. I'll just keep doing this. And you forget that all of those things are choices, right? How we talk to people, how we talk to ourselves, how we show up, how we dress, right? The things we do, how we spend our time, our boundaries, what we give, what we don't give. All of those things are absolutely choices. And for myself, at some point, they didn't feel like choices. And then I would wonder why I felt resentful, right? I would do things for other people. I would go the extra mile at work, and then I'd be secretly resentful. And it was really that I wasn't exercising my choices. So if anything, from all the loss and the rebuilding these past few years, is just to remember that I always have choices. I always have had choices. And now it's just the courage to listen to my intuition and make that choice, knowing that whatever I'm doing, whatever that choice is, isn't right or wrong, but if it honors my spirit and what I want, then it is the right one.
I love that thought, and I think it's so powerful. In so many situations, we think that we don't have a choice, but there is always a choice to be made. I love that. I always love asking this question because everyone has such a different answer. So, what does success look like to you today, and how has that changed over time?
Wow, that is a good question, and that is really hitting the hammer on the nail on the head. I don't know. I'll go with that one. Right, that really cuts to it. Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
success in the past, especially when I was in corporate, it was like the next promotion, the next bigger job, right? And that was what mattered was, does is my resume progressing? And I think if you had seen me from the outside, I would have looked successful, right? I had done all the things, I had a good job, I had a career, and now success means something much more private. right? I think in the past it was always like a public performance. I look successful, therefore I must be happy. And
Yeah.
that disconnect between like looking successful and privately feeling kind of hollow, right? That was what made me miserable. It wasn't the job. I could have done that job if I felt fulfilled, but at some
Mhm.
point it didn't. And so now my idea of success is much more private. Did I spend time with people I love? Am I proud of what I'm doing? Am I proud of how I'm spending my time? Am I moving in the direction that feels like growth, even if it feels scary or
Yeah.
discomfortable? Right. And so my success is much more private. And it doesn't bother me as much if I don't look successful on the outside. It matters a whole lot more if I feel successful on the inside.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's like success went from being a look, like you said, very
Mhm.
public, to like a feeling, right?
Exactly. Yes, I love that.
Yeah. So, as we start to wrap up, I just want to see if there's anything exciting that you're working on right now, any projects that you'd like to share about, or programs or resources that you want to promote or talk about. And if there's anything that I maybe didn't ask that you wanted to touch on. So, I'll let you know.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Vero. Yeah, so right for coaching, I'd love to share. If you go over to my Instagram, I'm sure we'll link it in the show notes. But
Yes.
there's a free quiz. What kind of baddie are you? I like using that moniker for women, especially to re-own and own
Yeah.
that baddie attitude. So there's a quiz on there on my site. I also do a 90-day coaching program, which is the baddie rebuild, moving someone from that physical health foundation to listening to their intuition to making a big bold choice unbothered. So that can look like a trip or stand-up comedy or starting the book or starting a podcast. But the baddie rebuild is something that I'm accepting clients for, a 90-day program. Really excited about that. And if I can plug one more thing.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So a part of my own reinvention is that I have a clothing line coming out. So it's a t-shirt and merch brand called Team Positive. So tapping back to my positivity and my fitness roots. So yeah, that's launching August 26th as at Join Team Positive on Instagram. It will be t-shirts and merch all for positive people on purpose.
I love that. And I'm sure that that's all things that my audience would really enjoy. So thank you. And like you said, we're going to link all of that in the show notes so that everyone can go over and see that. So the last question that I like to ask to all of my guests is, what is your superpower?
Ooh, what's my superpower? Oh, that's a good one. I didn't see that one coming. I do like Wonder Woman. She
There
is
you
my little
go.
personal hero, right? Wonder Woman. Um, but I feel like I'm a hero. I feel like my superpower is getting back up,
I
right?
love it.
There's a lot of times where, I've been kind of knocked on my butt, and I always get that fire in my belly that says like, "Oh, we're not staying here." Like, "Oh no, no,
Yeah.
no, this is not right." The house, a divorce, losing my job, like no matter how bleak it looks, I always have that little fire in my belly that says, "Nope, we're getting back up. Nope, we're doing it again." And if I can share that with other people, or I can share that strength and other people can feel that, then that would be a win for me.
I love that. That really is a superpower. Sass, thank you so much for being here today. I really loved our conversation. And I know that so many women listening are going to really take something away from it, which is always the goal, especially anyone who's feeling like they're in the middle of figuring out what's next. So, before we go, where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, the best place would be Instagram. So it's at Sass_Schaeffer, and Schaeffer has all the letters. I'm also pretty present on LinkedIn for my corporate days. So also Sass Schaeffer on LinkedIn.
Amazing. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to share this episode with a friend who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss a future episode of the Empower L podcast. And as always, I remind you to keep choosing yourself, your vision, and your values. That is real power. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you, Sass. Thank you for tuning into the Empower L podcast. I hope today's episode inspired you and gave you practical insights to help you navigate your journey as an ambitious, high-achieving woman. Remember, every step you take towards building your confidence and embracing your full potential is a step closer to creating the life you truly desire. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite platform. Your support helps us reach more women who are ready to step into their power and live their best lives. Don't forget to join our community on social media for more resources, tips, and inspiration. Until next time, lead with power and live with wellness. You are unstoppable.